Hi friends, this is your friend Jay Madhav. I want to talk about a different topic than any of my other YouTube uploads, and if you, it's Jay Madhav or Sanjay Madhav. If you want to learn more about me and my background, you can certainly Google me or look on YouTube and find out about kind of like where I'm from and what I've done. I won't, for the purposes of trying to keep this video brief, I won't go into the details here, but I want to talk about something that's it's a very serious topic, actually, and something that is a big part of my life, and I'm really recording this to hopefully help others, and that is something called tinnitus. And many of you don't know what that is, and many of you do know what that is. And basically, I'm not going to go into what tinnitus is and what causes it and all that. You can look at other videos and research it on that topic if you're interested. But I do want to share my journey because I don't suffer from tinnitus anymore. Doesn't mean I don't have it. Key phrase is I don't suffer from it. So, and I've changed fundamentally as a human being by going through that journey of tinnitus habituation. But long story short, attempting to make a long story short, I've had tinnitus for 6 years. In bilateral tinnitus in both ears, chronic, 24/7, 365. It happened with me through noise exposure on the job as a workplace injury. There was a malfunctioning fire alarm system. If you can believe it or not, happenstance, where a commercial grade fire alarm system in an office building went off repeatedly and was so loud and frequent it actually caused me hearing damage and tinnitus. But so that's how I acquired it. Now that was 6 years ago, and like everyone else, you go down the path. The first thing is you go to the ENT, and you're bothered by it, and you realize it, and you kind of go, okay, it's been a few days, a few weeks now, it's not going away. This ringing sound, especially when you sleep or you're in a quiet environment or you're under stress or something of that nature. For others, there's a food-related reactions that triggered, and so on and so forth. Different people do triggers. Anyways, so mine was noise-induced, and like everyone else, I went through the usual process and rigmarole. Go to the ENT. They tell you they can't do anything for you. You go to another ENT. You go to I think what would I do next? I went through this whole medical rigmarole. It cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket. But anyways, that's another story. And then eventually you go to a neurologist or a neuro-otologist and so on and so forth, and that can take up a year or two right there, just trying to go through the process and looking into support groups and so on and so forth, looking for the cure, because you don't want to live like that. You feel like, I can't live like this. I went through all of that too, brother. Let me tell you, the first 2 years, I'll tell you, I was suicidal several times. First 2 years, 2.5 years, I did not think that I could live like that. And again, if you don't know what tinnitus is and you've never had it, you can't relate to this. But if you have had it or know someone that have, you probably can. So this is not a video for everyone. But if you do have tinnitus, and as you suffer from tinnitus and it impacts your quality of life significantly, I'm recording this for you, primarily. For educational purposes too. I will tell you this: the most disappointing thing about the whole process is ENTs. ENTs are shit. It's not that they can't help you. That's my complaint. The bedside manner is the worst. As you've heard in other people's videos and their experiences, and I completely concur, you should never tell someone that they have something incurable and say, I can't help you, bye, get the fuck out of my office. Essentially, that's the posture. Okay. Knowing how distressed and distraught and suffering they are, and depressed and not sleeping and maybe even suicidal and so on and so forth. To not, it's It's a big problem in the medical field here. And by the way, tinnitus is the number one complaint of veterans returning from active duty. And you never hear about this, but the number one physical complaint is tinnitus. You're around loud noises constantly. That's part of your job, obviously. You're going a significant population are going to get tinnitus. But anyways, they do a good job. Military does a good job of keeping this shit quiet. So the point of it is a huge problem. So where do we go from here? Basically, I was told you need to take antidepressants and sleeping pills, and that's the only solution you have, which I had to do for a while. Not so much the antidepressants, but definitely some of the anxiety medications and the sleeping pills, and they helped at least get through for sure. I mean, I'm not recommending this for everyone, and your doctor may not even prescribe this for you, but I'll tell you, during the initial phase, like I said, that first 2.5 years, it was rough. And if I didn't have those pills to rely on to take the edge off a little bit and get some sleep, I probably wouldn't be alive today, you know. But I did go through the process of habituation. And basically after 6 months of having tinnitus continuously, I had a nervous breakdown, because that's when it sunk in. This is not going. It's already been 6 months, and this is not going away. It hasn't gone away, and it's probably not going to go away. One of my best allies in this process towards moving past tinnitus was actually a very good therapist that specialized in cognitive behavioral therapy. And if you haven't looked at that, CBT for tinnitus, I seriously recommend that you do that. But a lot of you will eventually habituate, and habituation, I'm sure if you have tinnitus, you've researched it a lot, especially if you're not really there yet. Habituation is a very slow process, I'm sorry to say. Like I said, I really didn't feel like I regained any semblance of a life until probably 4 years after having it. By the way, I not only had tinnitus, I had severe hyperacusis, extreme sensitivity to sound. So I pretty much was a shut-in. While I was still able to work, I eventually had to quit because I couldn't function. I couldn't even handle talking on the phone to do my job, or handling speakerphones or meeting conversations or anything that loud. I couldn't go to any coffee shop at Starbucks, cappuccino with the steamer, even a 60 decibel conversation, a coffee shop. Everything was so painful and ridiculously loud with my hyperacusis. The first thing that started to improve, and I had a lot of ear pain too, so the first thing that started to happen slowly over time is a lot of the pain went away. Not only in the ear, I had pain in all these nerves, temple, jaw, all this. People have all kinds of theories. Oh, maybe you have TMJ, it's causing it. Fuck you guys. You don't always know what you're talking about. Those are your dentists. Everyone's got an answer from their own perspective of what they know, right? The medical community does a shit job of helping tinnitus patients. Actually, I shouldn't be so harsh. There are some that do very good research and have good suggestions. There's a few universities in the area. I went to their speech and hearing and centers and audiologists and so on, and some had a little bit more practical advice than anyone else. All of the ENTs were just absolutely shit as far as human beings, even, in my opinion, for reasons I've already mentioned. So don't let the bad news the ENT gives you get you down. I almost was crying in the ENT's office, and they were just like, can't help you, go home, bye. With the amount of suffering that I was in, like a year into it, and no one said, hey, maybe you need some therapy or some psychological counseling or some medications related to it. I mean, maybe there's something, because clearly you've got to deal with some mood issues and other things. Anytime a doctor tells you you've got some affliction and it's not curable, everyone's going to freak out and you're going to be depressed. That's a natural reaction. My experience was no different. But yeah, so I went through like the first year of all the medical workup. I pretty much around a pivotal change will happen. For me, it was around 3 years in. But a pivotal change will happen when you get to this frame of mind, this way of thinking. I have it. It's not going away. I can live with it. I can live with it and not be bothered by it and dwell on it. And I can have a happy, productive life moving forward, even though I may have this for the rest of my life. And you can. And many of us have. But we've had to go through our own journey of habituation in order to learn that, because like everyone who first gets it, it's so intrusive and the volume is so loud. When someone tells you that, there ain't no way that you can believe it. You're like, there's no way I see myself living with this thing. I can hear it right now if I listen to it. I hear it every night when I fall asleep. I'll pretty much tell you 95% of the time these days, it doesn't bother me and I could care less about it. I have other things in life to deal with and to think about now. And tinnitus is like one of the small things on the back burner in the back of my mind the majority of time. Now, even when you habituate, you do have flare-ups. And those flare-ups do cause some stress and some elevated anxiety and depression and things because of the symptomatic escalation that causes suffering. But like I said, some of the medications, the sedatives, the sleeping pills and things helped me when I needed it early on. These are things you can decide for yourself if you want to be on long-term or not. And your doctor can offer you their advice on it. Some doctors won't even prescribe some of these things. But then again, someone who's not suffering with tinnitus doesn't know what it's like to suffer with tinnitus. In much the same way, someone who's lost a loved one doesn't know what the suffering of the grieving process involves and how much time it takes to go through the stages to get unstuck and move past it and move forward and start living life again, full speed, with all your objectives and dreams and desires intact. And I'm there 6 years later, thankfully. I got a fantastic life. But I have a life with tinnitus. I shouldn't say but, because I just don't care about it anymore. But the thing is, there's absolutely a track that we all go down that's common, most of us. There's absolutely a journey involved here. You can habituate if you want to. You all want to, obviously. You would want to suffer needlessly if you could avoid it. As you already know from researching this, habituation happens more quickly when you're able to relax and tune out and distract yourself from the sounds rather. There are many techniques that you can use to facilitate that, and I don't have time to go into that much detail right now on all of the techniques, but they're readily available online. I would caution you against a couple of things. One, support groups have not been helpful for me because I find that there are people who just continue to complain about the tinnitus and continue to look for a cure. I've also find it very unproductive to go online while you're having flare-ups and in a bad place emotionally and start researching tinnitus, because what you read online is overwhelmingly negative. It's people complaining about how annoying it is and the degree of suffering they have and that they can't live like this. And I'll tell you, there is very much another side to that story, but it doesn't seem to get as much content online. So I hope that this provides a little balance too to what's out there. And I know other people now, well, in the last few years that I've met that also have tinnitus and have gone through this process. And a lot of us have just over a few years have actually been able to move past it, move forward, get on with our life, not be bothered by it, not dwell on it during a day. One of the tricks in cognitive behavior therapy will help you a lot with this is to habituate, is being able to train your brain to detach emotion to the sensation of sound. It's just like if you lose your legs or if you have debilitating back pain. It's not really unlike that. Your brain is very malleable. There's neuroplasticity. It can adapt to a lot of suffering. And a mood and emotion is a very important component. You already know about the limbic system and how that connects here. You'll find it probably hard to believe that the emotional center of your brain can help relieve your suffering of this ear damage and auditory disorder. Now that's gone from a ear injury to more of a brain malfunction in the mechanisms of hearing chain, because you're hearing sounds that don't exist. They're phantom sounds that your brain is manufacturing, right? So, but the point of it is you'll move forward and you'll start habituating, and it will take time. You will move forward and habituate the quickest when you get unstuck and start thinking about stop looking for a cure, stop looking for it to go away. Try and focus, do the best you can. I know it's difficult in the initial stages. Do the best that you possibly can every moment of the day to not think about it and not listen to it and dwell on it. And it's a struggle for years, but you can get to that point where you're not thinking about it anymore. And you will make a lot of progress when you get to that point of being able to train your brain, and you can literally do this over time with a lot of practice. Train your brain to detach, to sever the connection between hearing the sound and having an emotional response to it. You know, that's key. There's a cycle, right? You hear the sound. It bothers you. You're suffering. You get depressed. You get anxious. Your tinnitus gets louder. You get more depressed. You get more anxious. You get more depressed. You're connecting a sound, which you'll learn over time is a very benign thing, to emotions and mood. And it's very normal. We've all gone through this. But you can get to a place over time training your brain where you sever that connection. So you hear it, in other words, but then you don't have the follow-up emotional response to it of hearing the sound and then feeling anxious and then depressed and like I'm suffering and then get discouraged and get into this loop. And that loop is a very dangerous thing. It's a loop, it's a loop, it's a loop. When your tinnitus gets louder, you dwell on it more, and you're listening to it more. And the volume goes up. It's subjective, right? So, but you can, right, sever that connection and disassociate the emotion from the symptom. So, you know, in short, that's been my tinnitus journey, and I hope, you know, if tinnitus is new to you, you're going to go through suffering, and it will change you fundamentally, I'm sure, as a human being, and a lot of your thinking and perspectives on your health and your life and your priorities in life and so on and so forth. But you know what? Is that a bad thing at the end of the day? Or not the end of the day, maybe at the end of the 5 years or 10 years? I really look at it this way, like tinnitus is one of the best things that ever happened to me. That almost sounds sick and twisted to even phrase it like that, too. I'm sure a lot of people are. That's just disturbing. But it really changed me and made me a better person, and a more humble person, and a more grateful person. And part of my personal journey in trying to deal with going through that was getting into more meditation, exploring Buddhism, adding a spiritual component to my life and things of that nature. I'm not saying you need to do this. I'm just saying this was, you know, what I did. So when I sit here 6 years later, I can actually look back and go, that's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. I am a much improved human being and a better person today than I was 6 years ago, and largely as a result of having to have gone through that period of immense suffering. The process of acquiring tinnitus and being confused by it, trying to figure it out, and looking for solutions, and then looking for coping skills, and then eventually getting unstuck and moving past it and habituating and moving on with life. Like I said, it's a journey you have to go through. You can do it. I mean, if I can do it, we're all mere mortals. If I can do it and many others have done it, don't believe all this bullshit on the internet, how it's catastrophic for everyone. There are a lot of positive tinnitus cases. Mine is just one of them. So I want to share that to give hope to people out there and help. Because I've been through that tremendous amount of suffering, and I want, if I can, in any small way, for you to go through a little less of it. So, be hopeful. You're going to get better. I guarantee you. I'm not saying your tinnitus is going to go away, it's going to be cured. And by the way, it does actually go away, and it can be cured technically, and well, theoretically, okay? But don't focus on that, and don't be looking for the cure, because that's going to cause you to go down that rat hole again of looking for everything that you can find in the neuromonics devices and the tinnitus retraining devices, and you're going to start throwing money in a lot of different things, and most of them don't have very good efficacy. So that's the best advice that I can give you, and I'm sharing this with you. It's a very personal story that very few of my friends know that I've had to deal with, and what I've been through, and my family knows but doesn't understand it because they haven't experienced it. In fact, I remember my mother telling me, and I'm not trying to put my mother down here, but I remember when I got it, and like I said, 6 months later, I was really distraught. I was like, I just feel like I haven't slept in 6 months. Something's bothering me constantly. It's affecting my social life. I can't go out in public. I have this hyperacusis. Everything's very loud. I can't socialize. I can't do anything. Even the music background volume at the gym was insane. I would go to the gym with earplugs. I used to wear earplugs every day. The first thing that happened with me is my acusis over time, a couple of years, hyperacusis started to reduce. Now I hardly ever wear earplugs, unless I'm in a loud environment. Certainly not on a daily basis. So my hyperacusis has kind of gone away. I dealt with that first. I didn't deal with that first. It just happened that way. And then my habituation to tinnitus started to kick in and develop from there. But going back to what I was saying about my mother, it's hard to find understanding and sympathy from people because they haven't been through it. And it's good to try and find someone who can relate to what you're going through. I don't recommend the support groups for the reason that I've already mentioned, or those online forums, but if you can find someone through your social sphere and network to talk to and share your experiences and feelings and have them share theirs back and see that, oh wow, they've been through this too and they've gone through it and they've come out the other side okay. Life can still be good and it goes on and you can do everything you ever wanted to do before you got tinnitus, and you can still be happy and productive and fully functional and so on and so forth. When I did those tests early on about how you're affected by it, how obtrusive it is in your life, I forget the name of those questionnaires, all my scores were high. They were in the 90+%. This guy is like disabled by this basically. Today, they say take that same test. It's like I'm barely bothered by this thing. It's like a minor irritation the majority of the time at best. So, but anyways, I digress. So my mother, and you might encounter this. That's why I want to mention this says to me, well, can't you just not listen to it and not focus on it so you can pretend the sounds aren't there and then it won't bother you anymore? So they'll put it in the solution in a simplistic way that's not pragmatic and it doesn't work. But, they mean well, but they can't empathize. And you'll encounter that as well. So be prepared for that. So that, in a nutshell, is my 6-year tinnitus journey. And I'm sure at 47 it's something I'm going to have and live with for the rest of my life. And you know what? I'm okay with that because I don't give a shit about it anymore. And I've gotten to that place mentally. And you can too. Allow yourself to habituate your body and brain. If you allow yourself to do it, it can be accomplished. So I hope that offers a little bit of encouragement. That's just my personal journey. Your journey may be a little different, but I'm sure you'll see there are some overlapping experiences. If you have any questions, I'm very, very committed now as someone who's gone through this process to making a large part of my life giving back in terms of helping others who are suffering, or particularly those who newly acquired, fairly recently acquired tinnitus, so they're still in that sort of hyper alert, anxious stage. They're committed to helping. It's a passion of mine, and actually now I would say, helping those in that situation get through it, and get their lives back on track. So feel free to reach out with questions and comments. I'm more than happy to offer whatever I can on this topic. It's that important in my life. I don't exactly know how through YouTube I can, you can reach out and ask questions and I can respond. Maybe there's the comment section that's enabled that you can do that. But if you post something, I'll do my best to reply in the most earnest way possible. I'm Sanjay Madhav. Thank you for listening, and think positive, be hopeful, and I wish you, it is a journey, and I wish you the best of luck. You will get there. You will be okay. Your life will go on. I promise you. Unfortunately, it's not as quickly as flipping a switch and having a change overnight. Habituation is 1 year for someone, 3-4 years for me, 10 years for someone else, 15 years for someone else. Okay? So your journey is your journey. But it's one that you have to go through. And, as I've already mentioned, if you look at it in a positive, if you look at it in a particular way, like anything in life that causes suffering, sometimes there's a reason why, that there's an intervening factor. You can come out of it, the end, after quite an ordeal, and end up being a better person and having a better life because of it. Because it has caused you to put things in a different perspective and reprioritize things in your life. Okay, I'll conclude with that. Sanjay Madhav, thank you for listening.